Hello, I have another devlog. Let me just actually open a world so I can be myself. Let's import some videos. I've got it working with the Unity player, and I finally figured out the issue with it producing way slightly more samples than I was supposed to. So let's go here. You see this is using Unity Native. And if I play this,
It is just so hard to be on land. Like, we're used to it, but it is kind of amazing that we are doing it. Out here, it's hot, it's bright, temperatures swing wildly. We're constantly being bombarded by the sun's
so see,
radiation. Fish
sounds fine.
fight gravity.
Gonna try another video. Let's try this thing. Pop this in. Some music video. Actually,
Stay upright. They
let's.
have void along with the lobe-finned fish in our eyes. Important evolutionary This is why I say this wasn't actually that's different parts of their body. Mudskipper bonked. Past participle.
So sounds fine. Doesn't sound garbled anymore. If I do this.
You heard about a man,
Sounds good too.
the Lava King. I told you, hop in and let the journey begin.
Functionalizing
There we go. So see, sounds fine. So now the worst part, actually, let me just put this here.
what they turned into. Now let me hit you with a harder one.
I'm just gonna keep it quiet.
Very useful.
I'm gonna keep this one quiet, but I'm gonna leave it playing just to show, you know, this is working. So now comes the cursed part. So this is working fine. If you remember from the previous videos, the issue was that like with the Unity player, the sound would be kind of glitchy a bit. It would be kind of garbled. And it was essentially generating slightly too many audio samples. So if a video, for example, had like 44.1 kilohertz, you would expect 44.1 thousand, you know, samples per second, because that like, you know, matches the thing. The problem is the system, it would be actually generating, like if I was like reading the audio data as fast as possible, it would be generating at the rate of around 45.5, you know, thousand per second, which is slightly too much. So the buffer would have to constantly be trimmed. It would constantly, you know, have to be like I have to like skip some audio data because like the buffer is becoming too full, and it would like contribute to the glitchy audio, as well as, you know, where is that audio coming from, because, you know, it's not supposed to have that much audio. How I actually end up like fixing the issue has to do with like how the data is being read from the Unity side. So on Unity side, this is doing the actual rendering. I'm essentially in a loop. I'm constantly asking it how much data is available, how many samples are available, and then I will read all of that and push it over to the main process, the Flux engine, to like, you know, handle mixing and playback and, you know, all the stuff so you can actually hear it. Problem there is, like, you know, I'll essentially read all of the available data. I would read it all the way to 0, and then, like, you know, if it got 0 again, I would just wait, you know, until there's more data, and then read that all the way to 0. And the way I fixed it is I don't read it to 0 anymore. I leave 8 samples in the buffer. So if it tells me it has, you know, 1000 samples available, I will read 1000 minus 8 samples, so 8 samples will remain in the buffer after reading, and I will not read more until, you know, there's more than 8. And it just fixes everything. Just leaving 8 samples in the buffer fixes all this weird behavior, you know, somehow. What's even worse, I did actually try, you know, just one sample. That also works. Leaving a single sample in the buffer fixes the whole issue and makes the audio perfect and makes it come out exactly, around 44.1 kilohertz for those videos, the way it is expected to, and it sounds fine. There's no more issue. So leaving one sample works. I kind of end up using 8 because that's a little bit nicer number. But it gets worse. It gets worse. Let me actually, you know what? I'm gonna paste a thing here so you can see the code. So I'm gonna copy the image, paste this here. So this is the offending code. And you see, like, I essentially ask it how many samples are available. And if there's I introduce this constant called buffer, which is, buffer for the buffer, because the buffer needs a buffer, because I cannot read the whole buffer for some reason. And then to consume them, I will, subtract however that many is. I will then, get a temporary array. I will consume those samples, and then write them into this is like the proxy that proxies it to the IPC mechanism. So it can be read in the other process. So essentially I just, I consume the data, however much it is, minus the buffer, and read the data, and however much I read. This should always be kind of the same, but just in case, however much I read, I proxy it over so it can be actually played in the different process, and it works. Then for the buffer definition itself, like I said, right now it's 8. I tried one works. It feels weird, so I just made 8. Problem is, don't use 64. So since when I was testing this, I would oftentimes notice there's after I read all the data, there is 64 samples available right after. So I was like, maybe that's the magic number. So I tried putting 64. So I leave 64 samples in the buffer. If I leave 64 samples in the buffer, Unity will crash. It'll just straight up crash the moment the video loads. Like the moment the moment I read the audio data, and after the read there's 64 samples left, it crashes. Like Unity will just straight up crash. I tried it a few times, it crashes every time. If this number is 64. I don't know why. I lost a lot of sanity on this, figuring this out. I don't even care why. 8 works. 8 makes this work. 8 makes audio work. I think I'm gonna leave it at this for now. I think the hardest part is kinda over, with making the audio actually work, because when you think about it, what is happening with this is this actually, even to me, I wrote the thing and it's kind of insane, because all this audio, this is coming from another process in real time, and I made this mechanism that pushes it across, to a different process in real time, so it can be played and mixed, and spatialized, and it works. It works. And it's even, it's being spatialized and everything, it's going through the system, but the audio is originating through a completely different process. And it just works. It works. But yeah, reading on the Unity side, it's cursed, and I do wonder, because the previous system worked differently, since all the reading was the Unity side was actually plugged into our audio system, so it was just reading it, as it was computing the audio. With the new system, it's just reading it as fast as it can, pushing it over the interprocess boundary, just so it can, process it and, buffer it there. So the previous system, it would almost never read it all the way to 0. Sometimes it could happen if the audio data, wasn't if the timings are working out that way. But there's another thought. What if previously, just by how the previous system worked, what if the timings end up randomly becoming as such that there would be 64 samples left after some reads, and that would be responsible for some of the random crashes of Unity? Because with this, if I leave 64 samples exactly, Unity will always crash. We cannot leave 64 samples exactly in the buffer, because that just makes Unity explode. And with the previous system, it's possible that, just happened very randomly, which is why we would randomly get some crashes. So this by its very nature, like, you know, of specifically avoiding leaving that many samples in memory, it should avoid it completely, and maybe that'll resolve some of the crashes. So, hopefully. But we'll see. Anyway, this works. So now both like Unity Native and the UMP, both of them work. They work, you know, without any audio glitches. It just works. I've also implemented I implement like the other events for UMP, and I think the audio synchronization should be pretty good. Like for example, if you seek around, like let me actually see if I can switch this over. Hopefully this don't explode things. This might freeze a bit as it loads, unfortunately. Yep. That's unfortunately still a thing. Blip VLC is very big to load. There we go.
Recycling your own raincoat by putting it inside of you and turning it into fuel. Now I need you to know that this is not an exhaustive list. There are a bunch of things that so eyes, very useful. And it is amazing that we have a literal evolved. Now you need eyelids and tear glands, and it's not what held us back. Because these environments are fingers.
So you can notice
the coelacanth talking about is neo-functionalization. This is where some old structures and what they turned in carry the ocean out of the water with you inside of them for controlling their strength. Our cells have this cell skeleton keratin inside of them too doing this. These
So if you notice, like whenever I seek, it actually, like previously what would happen when I like seek, you actually get a little bit of the odd audio before the seek. Now we actually listen to the flush event. So VLC says like, you know, flush all the data you have, you know, and you essentially just discard it because like any audio data that hasn't been played yet. And I think that actually makes things better too, because it feels like, you know, the audio is more responsive. And it also means like, you know, if you pause and pause, if you like seek, that essentially resets the buffer too. It also has our own timing logic that pushes the data, and that it's not, it will not wait. So if, you know, the data, if the audio falls behind, it should automatically correct itself. So I think it still has to be tested, but I think I'm pretty confident this should fix the desync issue. So, more good news, and the only thing that it cost me is my sanity, so you're welcome. And I guess I'll see you with the next one. Bye-byes.